Let's take a look in this video at some of the basics of operating systems. There's a great quote that says, "If at first you don't succeed, call it version 1.0." Pretty much. The operating system is the software that controls the hardware and acts as the user interface. What I mean by this is that the operating system controls your hardware. It's going to allow you as a user to be able to interact with things like your hard drive, your audio devices, your video devices. You can adjust your brightness, your contrast, those kind of things. This is hardware information, and so the operating system gives you the ability to manipulate the hardware that's on your computer. It's going to start as soon as the PC finishes off the post. So as soon as the post process is done, the operating system is going to kick in, and that's what you're going to work with. Application programs, which we'll talk about towards the end of this series, must have an operating system in order to work. They must have an operating system in the background in order to be functional. The functions of an operating system include communicating with hardware, provide a user interface, provide a structure for access to applications, enables users to manipulate programs and data. Operating systems must also have a filing system. They must also have a way in order to kind of keep track of what they use. So when you install a program, how does the operating system keep track of it? If you want to save a file, how does the operating system keep track of it? Now, when you're dealing with computer science, this gets a little bit tricky, but for us, this is not a difficult concept because we all have to deal with file systems one way or the other. Let's say at your job, you're required to submit TPS reports or some other report. There's ways to save your information. Maybe there's filing cabinets. Maybe you have to label things a certain way. Maybe you have to put things in certain places. This is what a file system is. It's a way the computer can keep track of information, of data. The two file systems of note are the ones that we use for Windows as well as the one we use for Mac. The Windows file system had two basic flavors. We had the FAT system and the NTFS. The FAT system, FAT, is the older system. This is what we found in Windows 95, Windows 98, Windows ME. It's an older version. In fact, the last version of FAT was FAT32. It was used primarily for home computers. The corporate world didn't really use FAT. It had NTFS, which we'll talk about in just a second. What's kind of cool, what's kind of geeky, is you can still run into the FAT system if you have an Xbox. Case in point, I had to get extra storage for my Xbox, and so I had a removable hard drive. I'm like, oh, let me just plug it in USB. We should be good to go. And the USB external hard drive was a terabyte hard drive. I'm like, I'll never run out of space. But it couldn't see it. It wouldn't see the whole terabyte. It only saw a portion of that. And I was like, why is it not seeing the whole hard drive? So I consulted the great and powerful Google and found out that the Xbox still uses a FAT system. What this means is that the filing cabinet that the Xbox uses only had so many drawers in it. And the terabyte was just too much information for that little filing cabinet. So that's why you can only have so much data in there. Current versions of Windows, whether you're a home user or a business user, uses something called NTFS. That stands for New Technologies File System. This is something we've used since Windows 2000 and earlier. It's a very powerful file system. It has more security. It's more robust. The Mac has a different type of filing system. It uses the version of something called HFS, and there's different variations of that as Macs have become more advanced over the years. Macs can read NTFS, so it can read the files that you save on a PC. Macs, however, have a hard time storing information to an NTFS drive, to an NTFS hard drive. Natively, it really can't do that. Now, there are some ways to do a workaround, and I've actually included a link here to CNET on how you can save information to a hard drive that you used NTFS on. So pretty much the only thing you really need to know for a home user is that you have a file system on your computer. Windows uses NTFS. If you have an Xbox, it can only be so large, and a Mac can read anything you put on a Windows computer, but it has a hard time writing to it. The next one has to deal with a user interface. The user interface is how you, as a user, interface with your computer. How do you interact with your computer? How do you get information from your computer? How do you launch things on your computer? And we have two variations of the user interface. We have something called the command line interface, which is old school. This is back in the DOS days, otherwise known as command line. This is the newer version of it. DOS is dead. Now you can find command line on your PCs. Older Cisco operating system. Cisco runs the internet. They're the server operating system. That's a more advanced networking class. This is all text-based. What you would do is you would type in your text commands to get things to happen. So for example, if you wanted to create a folder, you would type in certain commands to make a folder. If you wanted to move the folder somewhere else, you would have to type in text commands to move the folder. You just couldn't drag and drop. The drag and drop stuff, the warm fuzzy stuff, comes in when we're taking a look at GUI, graphic user interface. And computers right now, it's a GUI world. It's a graphic user interface world. This is probably what you're used to using. It has what we call WIMP, Windows Icon Mouse Pointer. That's the feel of it. You have your windows, you have your icons, you can click on things. By the way, the whole WIMP thing has been sued back and forth. Mac sued Windows, Windows sued Mac. They say, you've stolen our look and feel, and then they come back, they say, no, you stole our look and feel, and they sue each other back and forth. This has been going on for quite many years. So that's the graphic user interface. What's kind of cool is that all computers, all modern computers, whether you're using Mac or you're using a new version of Windows or you're using a version of Linux, all have a hidden, not so much hidden, but they all have command line interfaces that you can access. So if you're on a PC, if you're on a Windows computer, give this a shot. Click on Start, then go to Run, type in CMD for command, CMD, hit Enter. You will get a command window show up. If you hold the Alt button and the Enter button, it will maximize it. It will make it full screen. If you want to play with the font or play with a background color or text color, you can right-click on the menu area and you can access properties that way. If you are on a Mac, you can run something called Terminal. Go to your Applications folder, go to Utilities, and double-click on Terminal. Now, here's my warning to you. If you're on a PC, feel free to launch your command line. You really can't do any damage in there. Or you can, but it's really hard to do. I mean, you have to go out of your way to go do damage to your computer, and there's usually things that prevent you from doing that. So feel free to play with your command line. On a Mac, Terminal is not something you want to be messing around with. Terminal is an incredibly powerful utility that can really make you have a bad day. So launch it, look at it, and then walk away, close it out, don't touch it. I've had to access the terminal window once, I think, for my Mac because there was a file that got messed up and it was causing a boot problem, and I had to go to terminal to remove it that way. But terminal is incredibly powerful. So while I say feel free to go look at your command prompt in your command line window on a PC, be a little bit more careful when you're playing with a Mac. That is a very powerful interface that you've got there. All right, in the next video, we're going to take a look at types of operating systems.